Welcome back, Potato Strong Will, to Raw and Cooked Vegan.
Hey, Paul. Great to see you again.
Good to see you, brother. So you said we did our last one in December 10. That's like it wasn't 6 months. It was like 4 months. 4 months ago.
Yeah, something like that. 5 months, 4 months.
Yeah. So I just watched your recent video on you getting your results back, and I was blown away by that. That the HDL, the cholesterol, and the triglycerides. That's incredible.
Yeah, thanks. I was a little nervous. It's like you don't know what's going to actually happen. Like, do you have a genetic problem or who knows what? But and I think Dr. Esselstyn was saying cultures that had below 150 milligrams per deciliter were basically heart attack proof. They didn't have a heart attack. So in my mind, I was thinking if it's 150, 160 or something, I'd be happy. And it came down to like 112, and I was like, holy crap, that's awesome. And then as expected, the HDL isn't as high. Like everything goes down.
So, I was trying to understand what you were saying in there. That's interesting.
Yeah, I did a video. In the video, I talk about McDougall, and I think it was, and the total value goes down. So HDL and LDL tend to go down. So the theory is that if your bad cholesterol is low, you don't need as much of the good cholesterol to kind of clean out.
Okay.
So McDougall's idea is that your HDL doesn't really have to be as high as they say in the standard sort of medical area. So
right.
So it's not like I have to try to get my HDL up or something like that. It seems like they both tend to go down, and the HDLs go down lower than normal. So that was that explanation for that. And
that's really interesting. And I would wager here that it's just the general consensus among the medical profession is it's improperly based in the sense that the majority of the culture is so overweight and has such high fat levels, they don't even know what normal levels are.
Yeah, that's kind of what I look at it, and from what I read, the total cholesterol is kind of what they're looking at mostly. And
I'm just about to say something about HDL and this bloody thing cut off, so go ahead.
Yeah, so I basically decided to wait about 10 months just to make sure, that I cleaned out my system. I know when you lose fat that some of that stuff can circulate in the blood, and I just wanted to give it enough time so that I lost some fat and did some healing and that type of thing before I started again.
I thought you looked pretty good when we talked last time, and I know you had made some indications then that you want to lose more weight, and I can tell a little bit what you mean. I think your face looks a little thinner, and I mean, you still look like you got good muscular tone, and I know you've been working out. So as your weight changes are probably somewhat affected, I think you probably added some lean muscle mass, probably, right?
Yeah, it's a little tricky when I talk about weight loss or fat loss, because I think there is some muscle gain. Like in my case, I had a graph. I show a graph a few times now in my videos.
Yeah.
There was one definite spike where it came down and it went up and then it went down. And right at that time, I bought this. I started doing like chin ups and push ups and dips.
Okay.
Just some body weight thing, nothing crazy, just at home. And whenever I think about it, and I think that I don't think muscle really grows that quickly, but your body's going to maybe hold on to some water and it's trying to repair itself and that type of thing. So there was definitely a few spots where I tried to explain why I saw a jump, but yeah, like if you look at this, just what I can do, like I went from, I couldn't do one chin up where you just pull yourself up like this, or a pull up is like that.
Yeah.
The pull up's harder because it's wider and your palms face away. And this is more bicep, but the chin up. But I found that like I went from 0, now I can do, 15, and I can do multiple sets. And I even put
damn, son, I'm jealous.
Yeah, I put like a knapsack on my back. I can put like 25, 30 pounds. And because you get to a point where, but the other thing is I've lost, right now, just as of a few days ago, I lost 30 pounds from when I started, 206 to 176.
Yeah, that's a huge point. A chin-up's a hell of a lot easier if you're lighter. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So I think there's definitely, and then I've done some other things like push-ups and dips, and I'm trying to do these these gymnastic moves that I can tell I've gotten stronger. So, I don't know how much muscle would have been gained just from that, or the strength versus muscle gains, or the tendons and that type of thing.
Yeah.
I do think part of it is definitely some muscle gains as well. So it could be, it's probably even more than just the weight of the scale. But so all around, super, super happy and excited. It's been so easy. Like I knew pretty much early on that this was a permanent thing for me. But until you do it for a longer period of time, you can't say for sure. But
yeah,
mentally, I knew where I was mentally. Just a total shift in consciousness or whatever, that it was gonna keep going for forever, pretty much. So.
Can you tell me what you've learned? I noticed on your video you talked about HDL, LDL, and then triglycerides. What are triglycerides? Are those like fatty molecules in the blood, or what exactly is that?
Yeah, like I'm not an expert either, but the way I see it at a simple level is it's an energy store. So the way I understand it is your liver creates these triglycerides. But what it does is, at first, it's going to store glycogen in the liver. Like it's going to have a storage of energy. Yeah. So it's going to take the fructose and it's creating glycogen for energy. And then at some point, it can't produce any more glycogen. There's no more store. So then it creates triglycerides, which are a fat, and it releases it into the blood. So basically, it's like excess energy. It can't do anything. There's no more storage of energy. Whereas most of your body your fat gets stored, and then your glucose is processed. But
that's really interesting. So that automatically means, that makes sense then. That automatically means that if the liver is overburdened, or it's got the required storage of fat, it starts putting it in the bloodstream. That's really interesting. Okay.
Well, yeah, it's storage of glycogen, but people get fatty liver, usually on the standard American diet. So the liver does produce the triglycerides. And actually, it's kind of funny because I did a test. What is it? Yeah, I did a test back in, was it 2010, October, so near the end of 2010, and my triglycerides were really high.
Yeah, it was like 400, over 400.
Yeah, it was over 400, and basically they couldn't do the LDL. It says that the test was not performed, unable to calculate LDL when triglycerides are greater than, whatever. In Canada, it's millimoles per liter, 4.52.
So, and Will, when you got that test done, that was prior to going vegan?
Yeah, we were vegetarian, so that's an interesting point to make, is that, there's fat vegetarians, there's fat vegans, unhealthy, whatever you want to call it. We ate cheese, lots of cheese and chips and mayonnaise and stuff like that. So
yeah.
But you kind of deny it. You think like, well, they must have made a mistake or something. But I did another one, which wasn't. When was that? I did another test just within a year of that. Yeah, here it is. So it was August of 2011, so almost a year later, and it was down. The triglycerides were still high, but they were not anywhere near what they were that time. But it still showed up to be high. So my values now are like half, of what they were.
I know, yeah.
It's really mind-blowing because I think people don't connect food to their health, to their blood. Like even just fat. Like if you eat fat, people say, well, carbs turn to fat. And fat's good because your body will burn the fat if you eat it or something. But if you actually look at physical fat on meat or whatever, that's going into your bloodstream. I mean, it just seems obvious, just physically.
I know, dude. I know. Yeah.
Thick globules of stuff that's in your blood. I mean, it doesn't go in your body and in your mouth and just disappear. But for some reason, people are
you might have. Do you remember this doctor? He was kind of along the lines of Esselstyn. His name isn't coming to me immediately, but he would do this presentation, and he talked about people going into some of these restaurants like Fridays or something, and they eat a big greasy meal. They come out, they get a blood test, and if you've ever been in the doctor's office and you see, you know, they have those little stands with test tubes of blood in them, and he said when you got all that fat in the blood, if somebody gives a blood sample, you can see the fat rising to the top of the test tube, and it's really gross, man. There's like you get a half, sometimes less than half the test tube is blood, and the top is just fat floating on top of the blood. So if you get that's what's happening in your bloodstream. This fat is just floating around in the blood. It's really disgusting.
Yeah, it just seems pretty obvious that's a proof of it, but you eat the stuff and it goes in there and it's just clogging everything up. And there's the same thing with diabetes. Like when I read a lot about diabetes lately with Dr. Barnard and some of those guys, you know, I used to think, well, their blood sugar is too high, right? So you want to cut back on the sugar and the carbs, and then you realize that the fat, and I've even seen a video recently Dr. Greger did on protein, but the idea was that fat is blocking its insulin from getting the glucose into the cells. It can't do its job, so it keeps creating more insulin to try to, you know, be more effective. That's type 2 diabetes. And just that idea, just that fat is the problem, and the carbs are more of the sugar, and the glucose is more of a symptom, is really a big change, mental, you know, shift that needs to be understood.
Yeah, it's kind of strange because, you know, there was kind of, for I don't know, about a decade, there was kind of a low-fat movement, and fat was considered the enemy. And then somehow, I don't know if it was Atkins and people like him, but they redirected the you know, public's attention away from fat, and now everybody thinks it's carbs, and it's just so misguided.
Yeah, there's a new movie, or, you know, Katie Couric was just on Jon Stewart, and she talked about this Fed Up documentary.
Oh, okay.
And it's going to be like Lustig and you know, the Taubes guys who are anti-sugar, which they kind of usually lump in carbs with that, and demonize sugar as the main cause of everything. And you know, that frustrates me a lot because people don't differentiate, you know, carbs, complex carbs, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And the thing is with Atkins and that is you can lose weight initially because you're going to lose all your carbs, your glycogen and the water that goes with it, because you got all the storage of carbohydrates, right? So you cut your carbs to nothing. Your body is going to use those carbs, and there's water that goes with that is with the carbs, and then, you know, your body will use the fat if that's all you're eating, ketosis, but it's just a short-lived benefit, and there's so many health problems with it. But
yeah, you know, I recently saw a video by a Happy Healthy Vegan, and they compared these twin brothers. Yeah. One they had on a high-fat, did you see this?
Yes.
One they had on a high-fat diet, one they had on a high-carb diet. And the dude on the fat diet was not performing tasks at an optimal level.
Yeah. Well, I noticed when I eat meals, what would happen to me in particular was there was a few meals we would eat that weren't that great for you, like a nachos, chips with dip, and like sour cream and all that.
Yeah.
And I would go to bed at midnight, and I would still be full in my stomach. Like it was sitting in my stomach. You know how fat can kind of make it.
Yeah. It's it feels like there's a brick in your stomach. Yeah.
And so, and other foods we ate. So during the day, you kind of felt groggy and like mentally tired. You know what I mean? Just from the fat in the food. So you don't really feel like exercising or doing anything physical. You're just kind of drugged up in a sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
You got the fat just kind of slowing you down and
it's like that post-Thanksgiving thing. You know?
Yeah, exactly. That's what the tryptophan or whatever. It just, I felt like, so that it's kind of perpetuates itself. Like, whereas you eat the fat and then you don't want to do anything, you don't want to move, you're uncomfortable. And so it's just a whole bad scene all around. But yeah, I don't know. Sometimes it's frustrating, but you have to, what I try to do is just like think about myself, like, okay, I can do this for myself and be an example. Every time I get frustrated that somebody else isn't cluing in on what I'm tell them, it's like, well, let's do what I can for myself and be an example, and hopefully that'll speak louder than trying to convince people,
That's a great point. That's a great point, because I do get frustrated, and I probably waste energy being frustrated about the stupidity. So it's better just to focus your attention on accomplishing and shifting minds and hearts, hearts and minds.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I see a lot of communities like you talked about the YouTube channels and Facebook, and I recently joined Instagram, and there's people posting photos of their food, like who are low carb or they're low fat, high carb vegans, or
all right.
And so I see a nice community, and those are the ones that I'm really connecting with now, and trying to say, well, if those people need support, the people that come to me on Facebook or YouTube and they want help, they're willing and able to make the changes. So trying to do that, even though closer friends or family doesn't necessarily, want to get involved. Like when I have these successful results, I get all these great high fives and that from people who I don't even know,
Yeah.
And not so much from the people that I know, like on Facebook or whatever. So those are the people I'm trying to focus on. It's just like you guys and everybody else, just stick with each other. That's what
I think that's a great point, Will. It's a great point. Be proactive, positive. Invest your energy into where it can be utilized and bear fruit. And I have faith. I have faith that you can't cover up the truth forever, and there's just going to be too many people that are getting benefits from this way of living. It's just
Yeah, I think it's like I look at it like bottom up. So like people talk about corporations and McDonald's and governments doing this or that, or not doing whatever they should be doing, but each of us can make the choice and learn on the internet and sort of make the changes, and so it's going to come from the bottom up. That's how I see it. Like every other movement, pretty much, it's not coming from the top or the corporations. So yeah, I do get negative. I do get, like, when somebody says something, they criticize me or they say something that I feel is incorrect, I feel a need to respond. And sometimes I'm trying to let it go and just ignore it. But a lot of times, especially if it's on my YouTube channel, it's like, because somebody might say, oh, potatoes are going to make you fat or cause diabetes or something. It's like, I could ignore it, but then it's almost like he's correct. He's put it there and it's not been replied to, but you could get into a flame war or whatever. So I don't go too far with it.
Yeah, what I've been trying to do with that lately is I try to text in a civil manner what I perceive to be the truth with the fact, and if it seems like it's somebody who just wants to rant and have an argument, then I don't continue beyond that. But if they're willing to be civil, I don't mind having a discussion. If they're going to be civil, we can have a disagreement. That's okay, as long as they're going to be civil.
Yeah, there's one guy that was just going crazy, like a durian. He's from Durian Rider's page, and he was saying that there's another guy, plant-based athlete, Jay.
Yeah, good guy.
I was chatting with Jay earlier on the game, and what I did was I got into McDougall, and then I looked at Jeff Novick, who's a registered dietitian. He works at Dr. McDougall, and he was saying, just to be reasonable, like eat till you're satiated, like full. You don't have to be starving or eat part of half the way. You just eat. You eat till you're happy, you're satisfied. And people were saying that we're calorie restricting or something like that, and or if I say you don't need to eat a huge smoothie, like 2,000 calorie smoothie, you can just eat the food, like eat the whole banana, that can work for some people. Like in the morning, you can have a nice smoothie. I'm not opposed to that, but it's people that came to me who had gained weight for a period of time, so I was trying to help them.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I'm all about, like, I eat huge meals. I post everything I eat on Facebook, huge plates of fries and tacos and all this other stuff. I have a huge bowl of oatmeal in the morning.
All right.
I showed a normal bowl, and then I showed the bowl I have, and it's like, wait, you can see it. And then the salad bowl I have is massive.
That's awesome. Hey, what do you put anything in your oatmeal? Do you sweeten it at all?
What I do is I cook the oatmeal, and then I put it in the fridge. So because I don't really like warm oatmeal at this time. I grew up eating cold cereal, so so I put it in the fridge to cool, and then I put on some milled flaxseed for the omega-3.
Yeah.
And I put on, I usually defrost strawberries, and they get juicy and sweet just naturally. There's no sweetener in there.
Huh.
So there's like a juice in the morning. Like they're in the fridge in a container. And I put that on top. And then I usually blend a banana with half a cup of water or so. So it makes like a banana milk.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's really creamy, and there's no fat compared to like soy milk and almond milk and that type of thing.
And I bet that sticks with you. I bet you can go for a while on that.
Yeah, it's like 3 hours or something. Like from 9, say I eat at 9 in the morning, I can go till noon or so. And it's a huge bowl. It's 1 cup of oats and then like uncooked with 2 cups of water. So that swells up to, basically 3 cups.
Yeah.
And then the milk and so that's what I do, and it's super filling. And then I have like a whole plate of fries, which are 4, 5, 6 potatoes. Sometimes a veggie burger with that. I've been eating quesadillas lately, refried beans.
And when you do a batch of fries, you just slice up a potato and then bake it?
Yeah, I don't even peel it or anything. I just slice them. I've got videos on all this stuff. I've got videos on the banana milk, on the potatoes. And the funny thing is I'm starting to see everybody else. Like there's people that have been vegans and fruitarians and all that like way longer than me. But if you actually look at the dates where I put up a baked fry video, you've got Happy Healthy Vegan doing it. You've got Freely, the Banana Girl and stuff like that. And that's cool because they're doing raw till 4 type stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Freely's doing raw till 4, and I don't know, Happy Healthy Vegan are doing both. To me, doesn't matter when you eat what. Like I eat fruit sometimes in the evening. I have a little craving for a sweet or like an orange or whatever.
Yeah, for you, the thing is vegan, low fat, high carb vegan, right?
Yeah, I think that there's all sorts of things that work for people. So I don't want to get into battles between people that are like all eating healthy fruit and vegetables.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to be inclusive, and also like with people that eat meat and dairy, who can eat something like mashed potatoes and gravy or tacos and feel like it's something they can do.
Yeah, yeah.
But I do like fruit as well. I don't have some people criticize McDougall because he tends to limit fruit, but what I try to say is he doesn't really limit it for the majority of people. Like I've actually found articles he posted where it's like people that like he deals with very unhealthy people.
Yeah.
In his office. So there's a few things. When you first transition to starch solution type or any type of this type of diet, some people get a rise in triglycerides, and these are sedentary people. And I think it's because you're eating so many carbs that all your stores are full, and you're not really. And then there's the liver just says, well, I don't need to create any more glycogen. So, and these are people that aren't burning stuff, and they're in a transit. It's only for a short period of time. He says that you can limit the fruit. If you go to his website, there's a free guide, and he's going to catch all. Like it's a catch all for everyone, right? But other people can eat more fruit, and then there might be people who like might go a little bit overboard, and they're not very active, like with dried fruit, like dates or it's not that the dates are going to make you fat, but you're getting all this extra energy or calories in addition to whatever else they're eating. They might have fat in some of the other foods they're eating. So I don't know.
Yeah, and I think I would add to what you're saying is there's probably a little bit of a difference between taking 20 dates and blending them with water and eating that as opposed to just eating 20 dates straight. I think that's going to have a different effect. Yeah.
But, yeah, there's some benefits to chewing food. Like Dr. Esselstyn talks about nitrates, which opens up the arteries. And so you've got your leafy greens that have nitrites in them. and then it converts the nitrates into nitric oxide. And some of that process happens when you start chewing the greens in your mouth. It goes into your blood. And I'm not opposed to blending. Like I say, I blend the banana with the milk, and I blend banana ice cream sometimes. But most of the food I eat, I'm eating it whole, I guess you would say. But, some stuff is cooked, and I mash beans. I make black bean burgers, and, it's not like I'm chewing everything in its completely initial state.
I like it. You're not dogmatic. You give yourself some. I mean, the main thing for you is get people off animal products, get them to vegan, and then once you're in vegan, you've got this kind of this whole variety you can move from being totally raw to being cooked vegan and everything in between. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been getting critiqued on, like, not critiques, but everything I post, people, especially in this area, can be critical of everything you can imagine, from GMO, organic, BPA in the cans. So
yeah.
It's I had microwave issues, like, and McDougall looked at all the science and said that the microwave, there's not really any proof that it's a problem. And so if I did, like, I had this potato chip recipe. You slice up potatoes with a mandolin slicer, they're really thin, and you can microwave them. That seems to take all the water out, and they get crispy. Like, you wouldn't think if you microwave potatoes they would get crispy like chips.
Yeah.
But I tried baking them; it didn't quite work as well. And so some people don't like microwaves, and they're free not to use them. I mean,
yeah.
I'm trying to always look at the big picture, and
I think what your position really works for is, let's say one of your primary goals is simply creating a possible vegan approach for animal product consumers. I think your approach is much more likely to be feasible for a animal product eater who thinks that this is going to be a really foreign kind of departure from their usual habits.
Yeah, and I also think, like, that's totally true. I've got all these meals that I think are approachable. Like, there's pizza, pasta, tacos, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that that's totally approachable for people that are afraid of it. But it's also really healthy. Like, obviously, with my blood test, the blood pressure, like, my blood pressure went down. It was normally in the 145 range, the systolic, and it's down 106 to like 106 over 68. And my resting pulse is 50, and I don't even exercise much. And somebody was saying that your heart doesn't have to work as hard because, it's cleared out. Because I used to think 50 or less would be like an athlete, somebody who's doing marathons or something. I mean, that's so that's proof that, I'm not just doing a moderate diet that's for the average person. It's actually, I think, also really, really healthy. And I'm getting leafy greens and fruit as well. I'm not I don't eat fruit or anything. I'm actually eating fruit. And so but there's lots of different ways people can do it. If they want to eat more fruit in the morning, like have a big fruit thing for breakfast, a smoothie or whatever. I think that's great. It's all good.
There's a topic I'm kind of curious about, and we don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, but I'm wondering, have you noticed any change in terms of sexual performance? Do you one thing I've heard is, for one thing, you can kind of become more sensitive once you get all the fat out of the system. You kind of your senses are heightened in a way, and I wonder if that doesn't contribute to sexual performance. And also probably just how a lot of these guys are buying Viagra and shit like that. It seems that that kind of thing is less necessary once the body gets back to its normal operating capacity.
Yeah, I think that I think somewhere they talked about in Viagra commercial nitrates, and that's the same thing that I mentioned that can happen naturally. Food. Like, I think that a lot of people are skeptical that food does anything. It doesn't do anything good or bad. It's just because if in the old, the holistic kind of movement, it'd be like, well, rub a peppermint leaf on your arm or whatever, and people are like, whatever, So, but Esselstyn does talk about the arteries that go to your heart are the same ones that go to your organs, all of your organs, and and they're smaller actually. So the first sign of heart disease and arterial blockage is erectile dysfunction.
Very
and
interesting.
Even to your eyes, there's blood vessels that go to your eyes, and they can get clogged up with fat as well. And so I've definitely noticed a huge improvement in that area and it's really what I think is from leafy greens in particular. I mean, there's fat. You can say like you've lost fat, you've lost weight, and you've cleared out, your fat in your blood, which is all part of it, I think. But also the leafy greens, like I mentioned, the nitrates, just like Viagra, because Viagra has nitrates in. My mom's has angina on one of those nitroglycerin patches.
Yeah.
And so that opens up the artery, same sort of thing. The other thing I read about cabbage, in particular green cabbage, and that was that it sort of filters out some of the estrogen. So there's a balance of testosterone and estrogen. So it's not just the leafy greens, but it also, I forget exactly what it is, but it's like it reduces the estrogen or kind of blocks some of it. So it makes the testosterone more effective, essentially.
That's interesting. So now I wonder how that applies to women. Does that mean women need to be careful on the quantities of that they eat? I wonder if because they may need more estrogen, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them are on the pill and they get more estrogen than they need probably. But
yeah.
But yeah, that's a good question to look at. But just from my experience, and the other thing was like spinach, and like I eat huge salads of spinach and stuff, and broccoli. I make this cabbage soup or Asian noodle soup.
Yeah.
And there's broccoli in there. So anyways, yeah, I've definitely noticed it because, I'm in my 40s now, and, I've definitely noticed huge improvements, and that's another selling feature. And there's no drugs. You don't have to take Viagra or anything.
Yeah, I think, Will, that's a huge selling feature. I think a lot of men are very interested in that. So heads up, guys. You will probably be better in bed on this approach to lifestyle. One thing I wanted to ask you, Will. I know you're in Canada and you guys have that health system. So do they assign you a doctor, or do you get to pick your doctor? And because I'm curious about this blood test you just got. Did you just go to a lab and get it done, and then the insurance system up there covers it, or do you have what we call a primary care physician? Do you have something like that?
Yeah. So typically, you pick your doctor if they're willing to take patients. Like sometimes the doctor will have enough patients, he's not taking new patients. But like I moved about 4 years ago from Calgary to New Brunswick, eastern part of Canada.
Yeah.
And so I moved to a town and I had to find a doctor. So, I found out that there was, 5 or whatever doctors. And then I phoned one guy and he was taking new patients. So that's basically how it happens. The nice thing is it's not tied to employment or anything. Like I just, I don't have to stay at a employee at a certain job or anything. But yeah, so we're free to pick our own doctor.
But you weren't able, you didn't have enough doctors to be able to choose somebody who would be a little more nutritionally conscious than the average doctor.
Yeah, at the time I didn't really consider that. So I might try to find somebody, but it's pretty rare, especially here.
Yeah.
I even called the dietetics or dietitians of New Brunswick, and they're going to recommend like low-fat cheese and low-fat dairy, so low-fat meats and whatever that means. But basically,
yeah, you're probably Canada's probably a pretty big got a pretty big dairy industry, doesn't it?
Yeah. I was at the doctor. Oh, so I was at the doctors when I did this, or when I asked to get the blood test. So what happens is you've got your doctor, and whenever you decide you want to go in, you call them up and you make an appointment. And the way the blood tests, generally it's going to happen because there's a need for something. Like he has some reason, if he tested your blood pressure and said, oh, geez, I should get your blood tested, or you have a history of heart disease or whatever.
Yeah.
So in the past, I told him I had a history of heart disease in my family, and so he did these blood tests. But this time, I actually went to a nurse practitioner. So my wife has this nurse that comes down. She deals with the women, We don't really like the doctor we have right now. He's a bit kind of grumpy. He's not he's not sympathetic to problems. He's very headstrong. Like my wife knows a lot about certain topics and he kind of pushes back quite a bit. So there's this nurse that comes into town once in a while, and she set me up with an appointment. So I asked her for a blood test, and I told her that I went vegan, and I was worried. I just wanted to check my cholesterol. I'm expecting better results, and I have a family history. So she puts in a requisition. I take this form, and I go to the hospital, is where I get the blood test done.
Yeah.
And they do the test, and then they send the results to the doctor and to my nurse, the nurse that requested it.
Cool.
And then I emailed the doctor, the receptionist, and I said, could you email me the results in PDF once they're in? And it was about 2 weeks to get the results. That's
not bad. That's pretty good.
But this guy's not nutrition. Like, I didn't talk to him. I'm doing this on my own, in a sense. I'm not really, he wouldn't have told me to eat this way or anything. So.
Well, and in a way, I've noticed on these, your test results look similar to the American test results I've seen, and on these forms they show the healthy ranges. So you don't really need a doctor, really, right?
Yeah, that's true. The B12, like, she wasn't really going to do that because she said they don't do B12 in that unless you have an actual problem, like a sign of deficiency, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
But right at the end, she said, well, okay, I'll throw it in there.
Oh, cool.
So that was an extra bonus. I know you mentioned it was in the blood. It's not, it's not necessarily the best test, but
it's at least you're not getting a negative there. You were like solidly in what I guess are acceptable Canadian ranges. I think I've heard Dorian Ryder say that Japan has a minimum level of 500. So Japan has kind of a higher bar than, say, United States or Canada or most probably Western Europe as well. But for some reason, the Japanese consider it that they feel that you need a higher level. But I think, like you said, from your blood test, it appears to be fine. And it sounds like, I think you said you have some fortified foods that have B12, and you also occasionally supplement with B12. So, yeah.
Yeah, McDougall was saying from previous diets, especially standard American, that you've got 3 years or something of stores. And Dr. McDougall generally, just so people understand, is against a lot of medicine, a lot of supplements. He just generally doesn't think you should take any of them. And he's come around a bit on B12 and vitamin D. He thinks that, get out in the sun, and even if you don't have sun in the winter, your body kind of stores will be fine.
When you say he's come around on B12, what do you mean by that?
Well, people were telling me that he used to say, like, he was correct in so many ways, because now there's research showing like how harmful multivitamins are.
Yeah.
But he didn't want people taking B12 either at the time.
Okay, gotcha.
Vitamin D or any of that stuff, because it's very concentrated. Like, if you think about the sun, it's like, here's the sun coming in, and your body creates vitamin D. Okay, now you're going to take a pill because you can't get the sun. I mean, and same thing with iron and all this stuff that is in isolated form coming into your body, not in a food. And it's overwhelming. So a lot of the things that he felt, are correct now. Like, people are not starting to see the light about multivitamins and that, but there's still the B12 and potentially vitamin D that people want to take. But I'm also quite skeptical. And so I'm, like I said in the video, I'm not super worried about it, but like with the milk and the supplement, I'm definitely going to keep taking it. Especially B12. B12, I think it's water soluble, so it's not too bad if, but over time they always find more and more that these supplements, different ones like other ones at this point, are shown to be harmful more than anything else. So,
well, I love what you're alluding to, because I was talking about this in a recent interview that too much is not a good thing. Too much is not a good thing. You want the right amount. Not too little, not too much. And the American thing is always, more. That's not really what we want in this regard.
Yeah, there's a nutrient dense approach, like nutritarian, or And that's the same assumption that more is better, like the more nutrient dense, the better. And that might be true to a point. I'm not sure if every single nutrient should be maximized. Like if you look at iron in particular, men don't really get rid of iron. It just keeps building up unless you donate blood. Women have menstruation and can get rid of iron, but a lot of times we don't tend to get rid of it. And it can build up and be, I know somebody's got a problem with too much iron. He has to donate every month. And and funny enough, he still eats meat and fish and everything. But so I think what we're eating now with whole foods is so nutrient dense that I don't think we need to worry. But I always wonder, how does somebody set a level of a nutrient? How do they determine that X is what you need?
Well, that's a whole issue itself. This whole RDA, that's subject to a huge debate. Are the RDA accurate? They get changed frequently. So it's like as science moves forward, they keep changing these things. But I like what you're kind of also saying here. I don't mind nutrient dense as a principle, provided those nutrients are coming from natural sources. But nutrient dense in the sense of artificial supplementation, no. And I think I might have relayed to you, over the course of my many years as a vegetarian, there were a couple of times where I tried multivitamins almost every time. I think every time I had some negative detox reaction after taking an artificial supplement. And there's another guy who used to do a famous video kind of speech that went around. I forget the guy's name, but he talked about this dude that owned those porta potties.
Yeah.
This guy owned a porta potty company. All right. So he'd go to these events, these huge events, pick up the porta potties and dump them. And invariably, when they dump these porta potties, you'd see these thousands of vitamin pills in the in the refuse. So people are taking these centrums and these kind of these low quality vitamins and minerals, and they just shit them out. So. For one thing, you probably aren't using much of it, and then if you are, it's probably not the right kind for the body, or you're getting it in quantities that are inappropriate. So,
yeah, I think it's just in the food. Like T. Colin Campbell talks about holism and holistic, like with a W. And there's so many complex interactions within the food and within the food in our bodies that to isolate a nutrient.
Right.
So I don't want to even think about any individual nutrient. I just think of, the whole food, and so with protein in particular. So I had a good thing where I was thinking, I read that breast milk, like mother's breast milk for babies, is around 5% protein.
Yeah.
And a baby is growing like at the most significant rate, when they're a baby.
Yeah.
So why people think they need 20, 30% or more protein when they're an adult, because even if they're doing weights, I mean, they're not growing like a baby at the rate of a baby, like the brain and the organs and everything. So to me, that's the guide I use, is like, so all these nutrients, I think people get hung up on them.
That's a huge point, Will, and you're making me think of an ancillary to that. I don't know if you're familiar with what's her name? It's raising super healthy children. She's really great. Her name escapes me. I'll put it below. But she raised her kids vegan, and she highlighted this point, that the breast milk is 5% protein, right? But also it's got a higher fat content than what we would say an 80-10-10. And once her kids got through the breastfeeding period, while they were growing, they needed a higher fat content. So kids need a little more fat and probably a little more protein than adults. And so this ratio of 80-10-10 is probably ideal for an adult, but needs to be modified for growing children. And then I also interviewed, who was it, this guy the other day, weightlifter, and what's his name? CarbedUp VeganMuscle. Good guy. And he was saying that he played around with different amounts of fat in the diet, and he found that for him about 15% was the ideal. And that if he did like a 95-5, he didn't feel good. That was too low. So I thought that was interesting. So the fat may be a little bit variable.
Yeah, I think I've been pretty strict on the fat. I mean, oatmeal has more fat than like. Before I talk about that, the 80-10-10 or whatever to me is like the overall ratio, not of a one meal in particular.
Yeah.
But the oatmeal has a fair amount of fat in it, actually. Maybe 15 or even 20, somewhere 18% or something.
That's interesting.
Depending on what you put in the meal, with it. But
yeah.
But then if I eat baked fries, for lunch, there's almost no fat in that.
You mean if I put a big sliver of butter in my oatmeal, that's going to increase the fat content?
You got to put it in your coffee. I don't know. Oh yeah. So another thing I got off of coffee since we that was a lifelong habit.
Dude.
And it's partly because people like During Ryder harp on it quite a bit, and even Dr. McDougall and that. But I didn't do it because I needed energy, or I would drink it in the afternoon to get me from a low period. It was just a habit of a warm, roasted, rich drink in the morning. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
And, so I found this Dandy blend. It's there's no caffeine. It's a blend of dandelion, chicory root, beetroot, barley, and rye.
Huh.
And I just add hot water. You don't have to brew it or anything like coffee.
And are you drinking that now?
Right now, you mean?
Yeah.
I drink it. Yeah, not right now, but I drink it. I have 2 cups every day.
That's cool. I'm going to send that to my sister because she finally just had to give up caffeine because she's got so many issues with it, and she loves coffee. So I'll recommend that to her.
Yeah, like there's a lot of people that say, well, I didn't like coffee, or I started getting problems with coffee. I'm like, no, I didn't have any problems. I liked it. I still wanted to drink it. So what I did was I switched over a few weeks to decaf. Like I used a ratio of I used to put 6 of these little scoops of coffee, and then I'd go 5 caffeine and 1 decaf scoop, and then, and I started getting headaches and eye strain and all sorts of stuff that wasn't pleasant. A lot of really bad low energy where I'd have to just veg in bed or.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
It wasn't the greatest experience. But I thought to myself, if a food was healthy, you wouldn't really have a withdrawal. I mean, I justified, like Dr. Grieger, nutritionfacts.org. He mentions all the time about this coffee's good here, for different things in the coffee bean. But he doesn't say you should drink it, but this has an effect on this and that. And I didn't feel negatively or positively about it either way too much, but all that adrenal stimulation, I just figured, I'll give it a shot, see what happens. So I think it is a journey. You make improvements over time. I don't drink any Diet Pop or any artificial sweetener, which like I said, I'm skeptical. And when somebody would say, well, if you eat sweetener, you're going to get a huge sweet tooth. And I mean, these are people eating McDonald's and they have a Diet Coke. Hey,
do you ever drink a beer? Do you stay away from alcohol?
Generally, I don't. I just don't have an interest in it. But I do have a beer once in a, in the 10 months. It's maybe one or a couple. I had a glass of wine.
Okay. And so you're not militantly opposed to it, but you don't have much of a desire for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it. Dr. McDougall did a video on alcohol and caffeine and all this, and he says, as a doctor, he can't promote it, but 9 out of 10 people can have a beer once in a while.
Yeah.
And there's one person who's going to become an alcoholic or a binge or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm not that person.
Now, having said that, I mean, I concede I don't think wine or beer are healthy. I don't think they're necessary nutritionally, but I don't think they're as harmful as, say, a hamburger.
Yeah, I mean, it's you definitely don't want to overconsume that stuff, and but yeah, I'm not gonna be opposed to it occasionally. But one of the things that Jeff Novick talks about is the dose is the poison with sugar. Like if you put a little bit of sugar in something once in a while, I don't think that's really that bad.
Yeah.
And like at the end of the day, everything's glucose, and you know, it kind of breaks down to some of the fundamental components. There might be other, like in diet pop, there might be other chemicals in there, or like, but he's like, they just demonize everything, and a lot of it's these studies that aren't really scientific in my mind. But not everything is going to be a health food, let's say, for sure, you know.
Right.
But I just think if we're eating the way we are, the majority of the stuff is so healthful and nutrient dense. Like, say, if you put a little bit of a condiment, mustard, or, I mean, not every single thing that you eat is going to be 100% perfect, nutrient dense food. It might be just to add a little bit of taste to something.